work for a small local travel company. Take a couple of guesses as to who it might be. You'll probably be right. So yeah, my session today is actually kind of a little bit of a greedy session on my part. I'm trying to get content for a session I'm doing. Anyways, we're wanting to hear about all your horror stories. So any horror stories that all the people in the room here have about SCCM or Intune, and hopefully someone online says something too, because there's only 6 other people in the room except me. So yeah. I figured I'd start off with kind of a small horror story that I have, and I don't have a PowerPoint, so just follow along and be here for the ride. And Greg, do you actually want? You're recording us?
It automatically did.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So,
basically your notes, right?
I'm looking at my notes, so I do have notes. I was at least prepared. Okay, yeah, we can see it all. So our team at work at the small local travel company I work for did a fun thing this week. We started out our Monday night with upgrading the brain of our SCCM environment. So our primary site, our server MP, we decided, hey, we should probably upgrade it from 2012 R2 to 2019 before next month. Why do it next month if you can do it now, right? So it was kind of fun. We came across a bunch of different articles out there on how to do in-place upgrades of your config manager, MPs, and your primary site server and stuff. And we're recording this, aren't we? So
I told you to talk to me about this.
So you know that those of you that have heard Johan talk about stuff, he has this infamous phrase: everyone that does our job has a test environment. Some of us are also lucky enough to have production environments. I'll stand up here and say we do have a test environment, we do have a production environment, and it might as well be a home lab. It's not an exact mirror of our production environment, so we also didn't have the scenarios in place to test it out. So we did some home lab testing, myself and one of the other experts on our team, who is arguably smarter than I am, and we're like, okay, we're ready. We're gonna take this from 2012 R2 up to 2019. We got our whole team logged on one night, Monday night, and we're like, all right, let's do this. We'll get 8 people to sit there and stare at it, maybe 7 people sit there and stare at it, and we won't miss anything. So we went in and did kind of the prereqs for it. So we took backups, obviously. Even though we weren't touching SQL, sat on a different server for us, we still took a SQL backup. Because why not? We took file level backups of our box that we were updating. So like everything was great on backups. Small ad for Rubric. If you have issues with backups, call Rubric. They're amazing. End of story. So
Are they a consulting firm or software company or?
Rubric does backups. So they have, they're probably one of the more robust, nicer backup solutions that are out there.
Cool.
We went in and you hit the backup button and we regularly back up our servers, but this one I think took 3 minutes and it was doing a delta and like 16 gigs, I think, or something, maybe less. So there's a few different articles out there on it. You've got your advantages of it. Hey, it's pretty fast to do an in-place upgrade. Hey, it should be pretty painless. It's not painless.
I said that.
It should be pretty painless to upgrade, right? You're going from, we didn't really have WSUS on it. We just had the WSUS console installed on it. So we didn't have to rip WSUS off and put it back on. In theory, 2012 R2 to 2019, probably should rip off WSUS, but you don't have to, according to some of the stuff I saw. You're retaining all your settings, they're already there. So in theory, you're just upgrading the OS on another Windows box. It wasn't bad. We went in and looked at all the prereqs. Microsoft has an awesome article on it. Uninstall the Windows Management Framework 5.1 if it's there. Uninstall SCUG because nothing's worse than a 2019 server with SCUG. And from there, just make sure that everything looked good. So we're like, okay, yeah, this is great. We had 7 of us there. We're like, all right, let's go. We're ready. And then we put the DVD in the virtual drive to upgrade it because our in-place upgrade test sequence ran on the thing we were updating. So we put the disk in, we hit next a bunch of times, and then we sat there. And about 3 hours later, we were finally done staring at it doing its upgrade. And then we could actually go in and validate that stuff worked. So it rebooted, it came up as 2019. And that's when our first it's not really a horror story, but just kind of a mini horror story began. And we were like, hey, let's just see if we got lucky. So we went into services, found, a couple of services weren't set to automatic. So like your SMS services, we set them back to automatic. We'd taken screenshots before, so we knew what it was like. So we set those to automatic, rebooted the server, and we're like, oh, that's good. All the services started up, IIS is running, the proc's not at 500%, like something must be going okay. Then we opened up the console and it gave us a big red X. So we dug in and started to look and we're like, feel like there should be something in WMI for a config name. So we were like, let's do the site reset, because it is in the docs, like, hey, you should do it. So we did the site reset. If you haven't done that before, it sounds way scarier than it is. You go into your setup files for config man that are on your server, literally click on setup.exe and you go through the process of hitting next about 4 times. And then you wait about 10 or 15 minutes and your site is reset. And we're like, cool, let's reboot it. So, rebooting it fixes everything. We rebooted it. Tried to open up the console, got the big red X. And we go and look in WMI and, if you don't have to troubleshoot WMI or connectivity issues all the time, good tip for you, WBEM test, WBEMTEST. No spaces, command prompt, run it. It opens up your thing to test out WMI. And when you connect to root/SMS, something should actually be there. In our case, absolutely nothing was there. So we debated between doing a site reset again to see if it would come back or just ripping the MOF files back into it and calling it a day. So the next command, if you ever end up with an SCCM server that doesn't have anything in WMI about SCCM, and it is SCCM still, is MOFComp. So we, one word, MOFCOMP. MOFComp space, name of the MOF file. And all the MOF files are sitting right over there by that setup.exe folder. We just went in and ran MOFComp about 6 different times and brought all the MOFs back in. And put a torch to that MOF ball and rebooted it. And guess what? It actually came back up. So everything worked out great. Sent out the email saying it was all clear, told our guys on our team, hey, you all did a great job. Thanks everyone for the ideas as we were working through all these issues. And then the next day came along and I'm like, hey, bench guys, how's imaging working? They're like, oh, it's going great. I was actually kind of surprised, to be honest, because I thought it would be flat on its face. So, then the next day comes around and our bench guys call us up. It's early in the morning and they're like, hey, we can't image anything, nothing pixies. So hop on their server that they were using, their DP, start running down Pixie logs, and we came across a bunch of Air 500s. So if you're like me, you go, well, it can't possibly be related to the major brain surgery we just performed. So I pulled the pixie roll off the DP, unchecked the box, let it marinate for a little bit, rebooted it for good measure, because why not? Brought it back up, added pixie back on. By the way, don't ever check the box for WDS. It's a piece of trash. You don't need it. And waited about 15 minutes. We could see it in all the logs on the DP where it said, hey, we're setting up Pixie. It does some thumbprint verifications on certs. It came back up. We're like, this is great. The image stuff and it worked great. And then the next day we're sitting there looking at all our logging and we see some red X's show up on component statuses. And we look at the, let's say it was MP control.log. And we saw a bunch of these error codes that were exactly what the title of this article says, which is called HTTPS send request sync failed for port 80 with status code 500. And that's when we realized that there was a lot of stuff that was actually pretty pissed off about what we did to it. So we browsed through articles, we found different things. If you're ever trying to test out if a management point is happy or not, there are a couple of links that you can go to. So that's just in the middle of everything. So those two links are right here. You've got basically your server name of the MP that you're trying to troubleshoot, SMS_MP. And then you've got your MP list and your MP cert. If you try to go to those and you get an error 500, I promise you all of your crap is broken. So we got that, and we found this article that was like, hey, go run this command, and it's basically, it was kind of the coward's way out. Am I sharing my screen or not? Is it just to the room?
It's just in the room.
Thank you.
Busy ordering lunch.
Priorities.
Yeah.
It's okay. I wasn't showing a whole bunch. It's websites.
It's better.
Can you guys see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is really honestly the first thing that actually showed that was useful. So this guy right here is the name of your server. You've got your SMS_MP, and then you've got your MP list and your MP cert. So those two things right there are where you would see an error 500. So you can open that up in your browser. If you see an error 500, it means you're having a bad day. So your two options, call out sick or go to this article here. There you go. So this gave us a little bit of clues on how to troubleshoot the error 500 that we were getting, and things to look at. It's like, hey, look at all these settings in IIS, test these URLs, do all this intricate stuff, and we're like, I don't really want to do that. That sounds difficult. So there's this other article that we had found, and basically it's like, yeah, same issue, different article, error 500. Okay, so we've got an error 500. What do we do now? There's an application host.config file that's part of IIS. It was, for some reason, just unhappy. You run this command right here, and this command right here is what will basically get that file back to happy state, get IIS back to happy state. And as soon as we did that, our error 500 went away. When I looked at the DP logs for that DP I talked about that was having trouble with imaging and Pixie boot, it may have had a few hundred lines of 500 errors, but couldn't have been related. It was just a coincidence. So that's my horror story of what we've done so far with our in-place upgrade of our primary site server. Kind of one other thing that I had that I was gonna share with you guys. This is just kind of like your horror stories session. So my horror stories session has never happened to me all the way. It's just, I've caught it with like a gigabyte to spare, is IIS logs. So when you stand up a brand new SCCM site, those of us that are like farmers insurance, we've been around a while, so we've seen a thing or two and we know a thing or two. One of them is IIS logs. So your IIS logs will fill up a server and they will never delete themselves. That server will have 10 gigabytes of space and your alerts will fire off. Your help desk will ignore all the alerts. And your production operations team, your operations team, your NOC team, whatever you want to call it, first thing you do with any good alerting system is ignore the alert. So 10 gigabytes happens, 1 gigabyte happens, and then we log on to the server one day. And the server's like, hey, you're low on disk space. Do you want to run a cleanup? And I'm like, sorry, what? So one thing that I've got in my environment, and every place I go, I put this in on like the first or second day I'm there. Another bit of Johan greatness here. So configuring IIS logs for Config Manager. There's a couple options. One, you can turn off IIS logs, or if you work for a company that wants you to have IIS logs, or if you're not sure if you need them or not, or you just don't want to turn them off, whatever your excuse is, use a config item. So this particular config item is basically going in and looking at your IIS logs to determine how old they are. You're putting in a parameter on it that tells you, hey, after X amount of days, purge this out. I don't need it. I don't want it. Get it off here so my C drive doesn't fill up. Or alternatively, you can not install IIS on your C drive. The other thing that kind of goes hand in hand with this, your config manager installation folder. When you are installing config man on a brand new site, do not ever put it on the C drive, please. Stand up a D drive or an E drive. One other thing too, you've got your new SMS on drive. So most of us know about that, but if there's one person that doesn't know about it, you're welcome. I'm glad I could help you today. Make a file, literally no _ SMS _ on _ drive.sms. Put that on your C drive so config manager does not try to do something on it. Trust me, if config manager is on your C drive, you will eventually have a bad day. It has to be uppercase. Yes. So yeah, that's my 4 stories. I'm really hoping to get some audience participation out of the 6 other people that are in the room, 7 now. Or the people on the phone and the around teams. It'd be great to hear 4 stories.
I will start off by asking you kind of one horror story, and it's also been in the news recently about security. Things that can go wrong, and this has nothing to do with how bad CM is. It's just, yeah, this is something you need to be aware of, and you need to take a conscious effort about securing your environment. I think there was a very, very large company in Las Vegas recently had hackers attack their IT department.
Been one of the news the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
So, we as IT professionals, we are absolutely the first line of attack or whatnot. So, I'm curious. We never asked you to.
Yes, Chris.
How to explicitly what your environment is, get down to the detail. But do you guys recommend things like multi-factor authentication for our environments, being smart about for the accounts you use to log on to your environment, making sure that they're privileged accounts, same as treating it like any Active Directory system. Also making sure that I've had some cases where no stinking other agents from other software gets installed on the CM box. This is very isolated only. The CM administrators have access to the CM box. The domain administrators, we don't join to the domain. So no domain admins have access and all sorts of other things that kind of compartmentalize, isolate security to make sure that your CM doesn't become that a point of vulnerability for your entire corporation.
Yeah, that's a good topic. So talking about horror stories, if you look at the revenue that entertainment company in Las Vegas that got owned put through last year. Last year was recovery from COVID. They did, I think, $13 billion in revenue. You got to figure this year they're looking closer to be on track. We're closer to being on track for at least probably 15, 17 with inflation. If you start dividing that number by 365 and figure they've been down about 2 weeks now, they've probably been losing somewhere in the realm of like $15 to $30 million a day just in revenue they're not making because none of their gaming machines are working. They're probably having to comp a crap ton of stuff on their hotels and their food and beverage. Like my brother-in-law was just there and he said that people were staying in their rooms because if they left, they couldn't get back in without security letting them back in. Get this, you ready to go to bed? Call the front desk and ask them to turn off your lights. You don't have a light switch. Your light switch is smart, where in the case of this, it's really dumb. You can flick it, but as the saying goes, the lights are on, but no one's home. So that's a really good topic. And I was kind of side talking about this earlier. I don't want to ask you guys to show your hands, but I mean, if you don't mind, show of hands. How many people patch domain controllers with SCCM?
I think we used to, but.
I wouldn't want to do it either. So, oh God. So yeah, I mean, I saw a couple of hands come up. So, yeah, with MGM, it was like Motel 6. They leave the light on for you. But yeah, so domain controllers. Reason number one, you should never have a domain controller in SCCM. Your SCCM client basically has system level rights on whatever box it is installed on. So if Greg decides he's going to call the help desk at the place I work at and pretend to be Rudy, he's like, hey, Rudy is a full admin on SCCM, I bet. I'm going to call his help desk and see if they'll reset his password for me. He gets my password. He's like, oh man, I don't know what's going on, but I just tried to open the authenticator app on my phone or the whatever your favorite authentication MFA app is. It's like, I don't know what's going on, but man, my MFA won't work now. Can you help me reset my MFA? And they're like, oh yeah, certainly. We'd love to help you with that. So then he gets my MFA, he gets my username, someone at the help desk gets fired, and he gets onto my SCCM system as a full admin and sees a collection called domain controllers. Game over. Game freaking over because you can go into PowerShell, you can make a script to do whatever you want as a system on the domain controller, and you can deploy it for SCCM. At that point, you've lost, you might as well shut it all down, go home, restore from the backup from before, pray, hope. Manage your domain controller updates by a standalone with SUS, or for God's sake, take a thumb drive to it with the update on it before you use SCCM. It'd be more secure. Don't ever do that. Yeah, that brings up a good point. Like, if you're talking about security, the number one attack vector and the number one defense is us. We're the ones that are supposed to defend the castle, but we're also the ones that are going to get shot at first. Make sure that you are very careful with the rights that you give out in SCCM. You know, even something that's innocent like CM Pivot, CM Pivot's running a PowerShell query to see if whatever you want to know about is there. There's a guy sitting in the back that could probably tell you how much evil it could do. How much evil could CM Pivot do?
I mean, just like any management tool, can be used for good or evil, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to manage things, you need rights to manage the things. Yeah.
So leave it at that.
I'm curious because I don't get as close to as I used to, but 15 years ago with Configuration Manager, it seemed like management up didn't really understand the power that you had, right? I mean, I kind of grew up through, I was an intern when I started with ConfigMan, and I figured out a package command manager issue in 1.2, and all of a sudden I'm the SMS admin, right? And it's like, wow. But hopefully over the years that's changed, right? People understand the power of it more. Any management tool for that matter, so, yeah.
But especially one that has system level rights. I mean, if you want to emulate how much damage you can do, run a command prompt, put PS exec there and do.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine, Rudy, because I've been debating this for like 2 decades, right? The security scopes of ConfigMan. Because should you manage DCs with ConfigMan or not? And let's say you decide no, because that's an easy way for ConfigMan admins to elevate into domain admin, right? Okay, let's not do it. Let's say we're managing all the other machines except the DCs. You know what you are? Domain admin minus the DCs, right? Because you still can touch every single box in the environment. So it's debatable the difference between domain admin minus DCs, because you can touch every single box, versus the DCs as well. Now, of course, there is a difference there, but perception is that difference is much bigger than it is, because the reality is being able to touch every box in the environment through a management tool, whether it's ConfigMan or something else, is really powerful.
Yeah.
And the speed at which you can do it without auditing or oversight or 2-key approval is agility and dangerous. And sometimes you really want that agility because something bad's happening. You need to push the big red button right now to stop something, right? But it also is a very powerful tool with someone that intends to be malicious. If they can get access to, can do malicious things very fast.
Yeah, you want to talk about working fast maliciously, Tritanium sometime, if you haven't.
There's a couple.
Great, now just both Michael and I are just getting picked on. Is that what this is?
Yeah.
You want?
I mean, if we want a demo, we can ask the guy that's sitting next to me.
Well, no, I was gonna ask if you wanted my domain computer horror story.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I can
So
also,
because this is good, everyone needs to hear
I can
this.
also, if you want, I can do it in a couple minutes. I can tell you how to do a 2012 R2 upgrade without going through all the trouble you did.
Tell us what not to name a computer on your domain.
Yes. So if obviously using Config Manager imaging to set our sites, we work with a CAS and all 5 primaries globally. Because we have too many computers. By the way, I work for a company that brings smiles to your doorstep. So you get a scale of what I'm working with globally, but
A small local company.
yeah, so we,
Small local company.
yeah, small local company. So yeah, we have a CAS, 5 primaries spread throughout the globe, and we have just about a distribution point per site. And so obviously to automate making sure the site can go to the right distribution point locally and not hit their WAN, we rely on Active Directory sites and services to convert the IP address into the site code to know where to go. And one morning I woke up, I think I was on call, I can't remember, but all of a sudden, all the sites are saying we can't image. And we get, of course, the ever so helpful error code 0x8004005, just the generic one. Everyone loves that one. We're like, okay, well, typically that error code in our environment means that your site's not configured. You don't have a distribution point, so we didn't enable you. Digging, like, okay, well, all these sites are enabled. Everyone's down. We can't figure out what's going on here. We start a task call with Microsoft, I want to say at like 7 a.m. And we didn't get done until I want to say 6 p.m. that day. But we're just digging through everything. We're up on the MP logs and we're just seeing on the MP that it's just getting another small failure to convert the AD site address. And we're like, okay, so something happened on the domain. The domain's refusing to respond to our servers. And we've had problems previously where the MPs did not have our DNS search suffixes, so they didn't know how to find the domain controllers. We solved that. I thought that was the problem again. Start checking trace routes, pings, everything. Okay, everything can talk. And God, we pulled in like config manager top tier, we pulled in networking top tier, we pulled in AD top tier out of Microsoft support. We had a huge call going on all day. And then randomly, just one of my AD guys is just looking through the logs and he just sees something, and I'll go ahead and scrub names here, but he sees attempting to reach contoso.contoso.microsoft.com. And we're like, and he's just like, that's kind of odd. What is that? Oh, there's a computer on our domain named Contoso. So the computer was literally contoso.contoso.microsoft.com. And well, as it turns out, config manager, when it sees a computer named after your root domain search, thinks that's a domain controller and will just send every query to that computer. And some poor Ubuntu user's laptop was just getting hammered with requests because
I told you about this.
they named their computer random. They skipped all of our scripts for naming and just named it whatever they wanted.
You can't name a Windows machine after the domain?
You can't name any Active Directory machine after the domain.
So
It didn't break.
because the machine was Linux, they could bypass that Windows restriction. That's how they.
Well, there was no restriction.
Right.
If they were using our imaging systems, we don't let them freely name the computer, so that wouldn't have been a problem there. But the Linux person spun up a device and attached it to the domain with that name. And bypassed all the scripts they were supposed to be using, to be honest.
I wonder if there's an attack vector there that you could just get into the physical network and put a Linux machine on it named.
It didn't have to be a Linux. It could have been anything. It was just that there was an Active Directory object named the domain name.
So Raspberry Pi, battery tank, a Cat5 cable.
My Windows.
In fairness, this literally only broke config manager and only for the AD site lookup. It did not have any other effect in the network that we could find.
So life lesson, don't name a computer the same as your domain.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. We just randomly had an AD guy just randomly see it. As soon as we deleted the object, everything came back. Or at least once DNS replicated.
So Scott Lester has his hand up. Scott, I don't know if you have something you want to contribute or a question. Feel free to come off mute or chat.
No, that was ever part of it.
When Rudy said raise your hand earlier.
Oh. Let's see, Alan also put something in, looking to secure config man environment, a great video from a hacker's point of view.
I love the title, SCCM exploitation. The first credit is the D-bits.
Yeah. You gotta sing it, right?
That's good. I'll have to watch that later. So yeah, horror stories.
So horror story, that when you started mentioning things reminded me, a long time ago, Greg was doing some VB scripting and deleted SMS collection instead of a specific collection from WMI. And
I remember
freaked out for quite a little while until his PFE at the time said just MOFCOM collection and brought it all back. So that was it was a scary time for Greg. I thought that was a resume.
Node was just empty.
Yeah, collection was just
It's
empty.
gone.
Yeah, so I thought that was a resume generating event. But,
It must have been lonely.
yeah.
Yeah, someone should write a blog like April Fool's jokes you could do with config man.
The horror story from the chat, Jason tried to move our single primary from a server 2012 physical machine to a new 2019 VM. It went poorly. Backup sucked. Ended up starting from scratch on another 2019 VM. On the bright side, there's this guy sitting in the back of the room that works for a really awesome company that was able to recreate several hundred of their apps and patches. So they didn't have to do as much manual work. We'll take that as an opportunity to say, Patch My PC is amazing. They can create all your applications and update them for you. It's a good one. Anyone want to come off mute, tell a story? Just come off mute, you don't have to raise your hand.
That was not intended to be an ad for PMP, but I mean, we have basically no regrets of becoming a customer.
Yeah. Yeah, the amount of time that it saves you to have a product that can build the freemium apps that you use and that can patch all those.
Well,
Is
even paid apps like AutoCAD and all
Oh,
the
yeah.
Adobe stuff, you just got to download the content and throw it in there, and it takes care of the rest of it for you.
Yep,
And so, yeah, that saved probably a solid week of work for my team.
that's it.
Well, I mean, there's only 4 of us, and I'm guessing there was about 200 apps that were in there, and of course all their patches and stuff.
So I'm gonna go over the real-time savings and, allow me to sell the product for them. So if you look at packaging, and this is kind of a hobby of mine, I hardly package anything. I have an awesome team I work with. There's a bunch of people on it that package stuff in the middle of the night while I sleep, and I wake up and it's magically done. We've got a great framework for it. So we've got our processes in place. We go over them constantly, make sure they're working well. If you're getting a request to package something, you should be vetting that request and manually installing that on a machine to make sure it works right. Just if you try to do a manual install. And you might notice that it's installing the Yahoo toolbar too. But do that first sanity check, and you go and try to silently install it just from a command prompt. And then you take that and you try to silently uninstall it. And then you make sure that you're actually getting rid of all the files for it. And at that point, you open up config man and go, okay, I'm good. Put the source files on your directory, the config man can get it. You package it in config man. You should deploy it out to a computer to make sure it works. You should also uninstall it to make sure you can get rid of it. Now you should put the old version on there. Now you should put your new version on top of it and see if it actually installs next to it or on top of it.
It's actually another horror story. I don't have the specific example, but remember that there is a difference between installing an app as yourself with administrator rights and config manager installing the app in the system context.
PS exec.
Yes.
So any testing that you're doing, command prompt PS exec -s -i cmd.
Yep.
So for everything.
Enjoy the things from your security team when they
Yeah.
log that you're using PS
So
exec.
for packaging, like this is coming to Jason's example. If you're truly packaging stuff and testing it to the extent that you should test it to make sure you don't have a bad day, you could be into something like 2, 3, 4 hours just for one packaging thing. I can package something in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, thankfully, because these were all existing stuff that we had before the environment blew up, we didn't have to go through all that. We knew they were good. We had the content on our network share. And so we were just, pounding through creating all the apps in config manager, making sure that the detection rules are right and all that stuff, which we have a README in each folder for each app so that all that stuff's already in there. We can just copy and paste.
Yes.
And
Good
so-
process.
And on process, really good to have. We're probably not that good at it, but yeah, I mean, there's people that'll do packaging. Everything they package is in PowerShell app deployment toolkit, and that way you know that your install's right here, your uninstall's right there, and then they'll put like the detection in like a notepad file just for kicks and grins. Great little piece of insurance. And yes, PowerShell app deployment toolkit is gold. Yeah, kind of, we talk about horror stories, so talk about a success story now. Here's someone I've heard talk that I know. They did PowerShell app deployment toolkit for everything. Everything they packaged was PowerShell app deployment toolkit. They wanted to move to Intune. Guess how easy their life was? You could write a script and say, go into this folder and grab all the stuff out of it. Here's the install file, here's the uninstall file, or the command or whatever. And your install command was literally to kick off PowerShell app deployment toolkit. Your uninstall command was to pick up PowerShell app deployment toolkit. And they were able to move stuff from config man to Intune very, very fast.
I'm curious, and Craig, maybe you can measure this, like how many people like use PSADT?
I'm just gonna put a poll up.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, do a poll. I mean, I use it. I don't use it religiously for everything, but there are
Saves
certain
time.
things. And, you know, you've got the ability to do an app, a task sequence as an app, but there are limitations.
What's any limitations, Rudy, that kind of get you on PSADT or nothing top of mind?
Application groups.
Application groups.
Which, I mean, I'd be really curious to see the telemetry on how many people actually use application groups. I feel like there was something that like where you couldn't do a task sequence app or whatever is that. Or maybe it was maybe it was actually a task sequence, like an application that was built as a task sequence can be put in a task sequence.
Right, I see.
I can't remember. There were a couple.
And it's sometimes that was a little bit of a moving target. A lot of that happened right at the end of when I was there, when we fixed
Yeah.
those things.
Posted a poll, we'll see.
Okay, cool.
A lot of yeses out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can't see it at least there. Good. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's something too that, you know, great part about our community and the stuff we do. There's a lot of really great free tools. Use them, love them, tell the people thank you, buy them here if you ever meet them in person. It's good stuff. Hey, Jan, do you have any horror stories in our NDA?
So many. I know we're streaming, so I'm trying to think.
So it can't be NDA and it can't be embarrassing, too embarrassing.
You know, what's a little embarrassing?
Well, embarrassing's okay.
What's it called when the crime is so far in the past that you can't be like, go to jail for it?
Statute of
Yeah,
limitations.
I'm just trying to go through my head how many of those have passed.
Well, wait, I will mention one thing that, of course, the major horror story about CM and CM pivot and running everything at scale on the fast channel is the fact that you can do a lot of damage very, 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 very quickly. And so I will mention for the previous company that used to work for Tanium that we were very strict on do no damage ever. And that's probably one of the better pieces of advice I have. Don't do any damage, don't do any changes. So that can mean just simply deleting files. There is no global command in Tanium, for example, to delete files. You have to actually specify the specific file name. You have to type in the computer to match to, and it can run that way. Things like we had a request once from a very, very, very large government or military organization that wanted to be able to literally brick machines. So if a machine was left behind in a war zone, they wanted to delete it, reformat the drive in order to protect the contents thereof, how would you do that? Well, that's also a resume generating event. If you could send out at scale a command to brick a machine, that would be bad. So another possibility might be for a machine, rather than actually bricking it, let's just change the BitLocker or remove the TPM key from the device and reboot the machine so that it doesn't boot up automatically. The machine's still encrypted. You have the recovery password back in your Active Directory main controller, and you can recover it if necessary, but you're not deleting the box. So all I can recommend is, yeah, absolutely, when using modern scripts that use SCCM fast channel, that go out really quickly, be very, very careful about doing stuff that damages environments. If at all possible, do stuff that's recoverable. I'm going to lock down the ports, leave a couple of network ports open, that you can go in and remanage the box and turn it back on. But yeah, absolutely be very, very careful.
Yeah. I mean, the power is real, right? If you start going into the scripts feature of SCCM. So we had an incident that was probably at least 6 months ago now, maybe longer. Time flies when you have fun. But the short story of it was we had an application that was, I think there was like some registry entry or some file that was just slightly off. And someone came to me and said, hey, we've got to fix this. You know, we're trying to package up an installer. We're trying to build an installer right now to do a upgrade to the version of this product. We were literally like sub 1, no one could do anything. You know, it was bad. Like, well, if you just need to change this registry, we could probably write a script really quick that will back up that part of the registry and then go in and change it to what you need it to be. We wrote that script and I pushed it out to about 7,000 computers. And all 7,000 computers had a PowerShell script that fixed the registry, fixed the SAP, and brought us back online. And I think it took about 90 seconds. So imagine if you wanted to use that for evil. In 90 seconds or less, I could own your entire domain.
Or imagine if your script actually did have a bug in it, so you archived it, and when you try to restore it, it didn't work. At least you had the backup that you're able to go back to.
Yeah. That's interesting in the chat. Back when the conflict with Russia and Ukraine started, this person had to brick a Russia office with BitLocker to basically distance themselves from it. So yeah, good example. I mean, you want to break the machines, break BitLocker.
I do have, a lot of my stories are going to be early adoption customers under TAP that were trying new features or fixes for the first time. And, luckily we had the ability to fly engineers to the customer if something bad happened. And we did have, during some of the BitLocker redesign and MBAM integration, a customer that was using some setting that once we made the change, none of their machines would boot up. They were all stuck in the BitLocker screen and no one had the keys. So yeah, it's kind of an arms race, right? You want a management tool that's like really sophisticated and powerful, but it has to be able to work through all the different security issues to work. So, even in the task sequence, the sophistication to be able to do things and reboot, but sometimes bypass the BitLocker, but sometimes not, can get complex really fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, using BitLocker intentionally, that's interesting.
I mean, it's a poor man's life, but no other way to look at it. Yeah, big man on Windows boxes. It's not like Intune where you can click on a device and say wipe device or something.
There's also like bigger customers can be very fragile on their performance with the sites. Or if you think about the sites, the more clients you have, the more those clients that are sending data to be processed. It's like asking the site server to hook up to hundreds of fire hoses, right? Turn them all on full blast. And it can hit a steady state where it barely can keep its head above water. But if it starts not keeping up, things can fall over really fast. And you can do things like turn software inventory and start at star on all your clients. And if you have 50,000 clients, that's an easy way to bury your site server and never get it back. Or, even making some tweaks to the hardware inventory, what's being collected. And if you collect something that's highly volatile and your hardware inventory is every day, right? Because it can be really efficient, it's delta. But if it has to do a full and everything's set in a full, that's another place where the site server can get behind and never catch up. And then you have status message saying, oh, I'm out of sync. And so now another system is making it even worse because it's telling you that the first system's not working. And then people, which very few in the world that don't understand the flow, try to make it better by copying all the stats messages to another folder so the backlog's gone. And then when it's gone, start putting them back in. But now you're putting things back in the wrong order. And the site server is schizophrenic because it can't jump back in time, right?
Precincts of precincts, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then it makes it even worse. So there is this aspect of the site server that, you know, it's really good unless it gets underwater, and then it can get really bad really fast.
So take your example and say you're normally good, you know, you don't usually use more than like half of what you have available to you on that site server. And then you start throwing your 500s to most of the clients that talk to you.
I've actually got one on that subject. I just remembered hearing it. So I think it was when we upgraded to Config Manager 2111, maybe it was 2103, but there was a bug that corrupted the CI documents on every application that we had. And so all of a sudden clients would, any client that was already good beforehand was great, but anything new, all of a sudden would not get any thing in their software center. Like none of our applications would appear, period, across the whole board. And played around with that with our DSE, and then finally he finds an article. It's like, oh yeah, there was a bug on the upgrade from this. You just need to you just need to touch every app and rev them. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's simple enough. Quick PowerShell script, grab all CM applications, make a change to the just comments or something and save all 350 plus apps. That buried every single MP site server primary in our cast for 2 weeks to have 600,000 clients report the updated status for over 300 apps. So definitely think about your rate limiting, especially when the DSE is like, no, it's fine, bro.
Yeah, talking about like upgrades to SCCM, that's another thing too, where it helps to have the testing process. Like, go through and make a document for your site of the things in config man that are the nearest and dearest to you. And whenever you do a config manager upgrade from one version to the next, most of the time now it's really painless. But test everything as soon as you've upgraded so that you know if it went wrong and you know where it went wrong.
I'm jealous of everyone that does not have to deal with DRS on upgrades.
So case in point, we had an upgrade, and this will be my last story. We had a config manager upgrade we did at an organization I used to work at. And this was back when they went from not having RBAC controls on folders of collections. And he went to being able to put RBAC controls on folders. I am I nerd out when it comes to RBAC. I do scopes, I do custom roles, I do all sorts of stuff. And I came here and I think Dan had just done a demo on how awesome this new folder RBAC stuff was gonna be. And I got really excited about it. I went and I started, like, the day you get it, I fast channeled my prod environment. I went and downloaded the update, I ran it, and I was like, yeah, awesome, man, we ran this update. I tweeted about it. I'm like, day one config manager upgrade customer. I think DJM even hit the like button all day. And then about 8 hours later, my help desk people call me and they're like, we can't see any devices. And there was a bug. I opened a support case. I emailed the guy in the back there and I was like, can you help with this? I think it's actually legitimately broken. Like, it's not me. And it was the case of, they're looking at it and they're like, we should probably do a hotfix for that. Because our back had completely broke us. I don't remember the specifics, but it was like, there was a SQL magic that we ran that got us back, and then the hotfix came out a couple days later. But the lesson of that, test everything. test when you do an upgrade to config man. Just test to make sure you can use some software deployments, that your imaging works, that you can package something, that you can modify something that existed before. I mean, have a playbook and run down that. Test, test, test. All right, okay, that's all I've got. Hopefully it was interesting to at least one person. I see anyone snoring, so that's nice. Bunch of people at home that probably fall asleep.
Thanks, Rudy. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right.